A warning from the United Nations that the Central African Republic could plunge back into a full-blown humanitarian crisis. As Kenyans prepare to go to the polls, experts say fake election news is on the rise. And robots from around the world go head-to-head at the first ever International High School Robotics Competition. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. We begin our broadcast tonight in the Central African Republic, where a surge in fighting between militias in several hotspots has uprooted more than 100,000 people since April, and the worst spell of displacement since the peak of the conflict in 2014. That's according to age groups, including the Norwegian Refugee Council. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs Chief Stephen O'Brien, who visited the country this week, the spiraling violence between armed factions in a CAR could plunge the country back into a large-scale humanitarian crisis just 4 years after conflict first erupted. More than 1 million people are now displaced, and about a half are living as refugees in neighboring countries. And nearly 1 in 2 people, at least 2.2 million, need aid.
We have seen this new development here in CAR of now a more religious and even ethnic dimension to it, which was not the case when I was here 2 years ago. And this is very seriously. So here in Bangassou, we have evidence of why we have a deteriorating situation, but already very good work being done by the humanitarians, both in the UN and our partners beyond. We need to build on that, which is why we so desperately need to now really raise the cash in order to help people who are in desperate need.
Well, the Central African government has basically no control of the regions outside the capital, Bangui, which allows the militia to roam freely. Not too far from there now to East Africa, where the ruling Rwanda Patriotic Front has launched a re-election campaign for its leader, President Paul Kagame, with rallies in the heartland of the country. Mr. Kagame is widely expected to retain his seat, which he has held since 2000. Kagame is running for a third term after Rwandans voted overwhelmingly to support changes to the constitution that would allow him to extend his term in office until 2034. He's widely admired for restoring stability to the East African nation and presiding over rapid economic growth and creating a relatively corruption-free government. Well, Mr. Kagame will run against the opposition, Democratic Green Party, Frank Habineza, whose platform includes investing in agriculture, increasing salaries for the security forces, and ending political detentions. There's also an independent candidate, Felipe Mpayimana. Still in East Africa, with less than 20 days to the August polls, Kenya is grappling with an increase in fake election news. Now, a group of experts have revealed their research on the subject. The study by researchers from the communications consulting firms Portland Africa and Geopol reveals that 90% of Kenyans have seen or heard false news about this year's elections. Now, the survey was conducted earlier in May this year, and some 2,000 respondents countrywide of various ages, gender, religion, and ethnicity participated. Now, John Murunga from Geopol says most Kenyans trust the media as their primary source of credible news, with about 76% saying that information gathered from television is accurate. He says that using a multi-channel approach could be a way of countering fake news in the country. However, he notes that misinformation deprives the electorate crucial information to make informed decisions. Joining us live via a phone from Kisumu in Kenya to talk about this, some more about this issue, is David Ohito. David is a media consultant and political analyst. Hi, David.
Hi, Vincent. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Now, from what you gather, does fake news have the capacity to sway the electorate in any direction?
Yes, I think it does in a very big way, because as you see from the survey itself, nearly 9 out of 10 people have come into contact with them, and it's just cashing in on the mix that the media is not feeling, the mainstream media is not feeling. So it's taking advantage of that, twisting the news, and, using very powerful graphics and text sometimes even videos which are not a reality. So people tend to react before they get to know what really transpired and what the true news is.
Now, what efforts are there to mitigate this? And I know that the Kenya Media Council said they have trained some journalists, but how are they approaching this to make sure they can counter this fake news?
Fake news has just been done a blow by continuous training of practicing journalists that they must verify the information they receive and the stories they find, so that in the unlikely event that the consumers of news, the audiences have come across fake news or news that would make them change their mind, they have the option of running to authentic sites and authentic media houses to verify whether such info is really true and the truth, but nothing but the truth. But it also calls for the media houses, not more of the media council who is the regulator. The media houses must retool themselves, position themselves to be able to guide public and audiences with the truth and verified information as it happens, if not in real time.
And very quickly, we know that one of the biggest challenges that most of this is being transmitted or received through social platforms, which are easily accessible on, of course, cell phones, which everybody has. And that becomes a tough call, right?
Yes. Indeed, it is a tough call. The penetration of the mobile phone technology in Kenya is, I think, one of the most astounding in the world now, with over 80% having access to this gadget, not only for information, but even for financial transactions. There is a regulator, but whether the regulator has capacity to control and verify fake news is impossible, because what we have seen in the last few days, blanket statements that we will, for example, arrest WhatsApp group admins and charge them in court. I don't think that is the direction to take.
And as for the big media houses, it was one of the strategies to try and always kind of come together and release one authentic story whenever there is some fake news that may be kind of spreading around fast.
It's a strategy, but it depends on how each media house implements the same, because media houses are in competition for audiences, in competition for advertising revenue, and whoever emerges with a better strategy in terms of confronting fake news will remain more authentic and reliable for the audience. So they will be at the top, and many people will seek to their content to verify any information they have doubts about.
Well, David, thank you very much, and I really apologize to our viewers. The line is not very clear. That is David Ohito, a media consultant and political analyst, speaking to us from the town of Kisumu. Well, now, it turns out U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin slipped in a second talk at the G20 summit earlier this month in Germany that was not previously disclosed. White House officials confirmed Tuesday night the second talk came at a dinner for world leaders and their spouses. Now, there was no immediate word on what was discussed. President Trump took to Twitter, rejecting media reports of, in his words, a secret dinner with Putin. The first meeting between Trump and Putin lasted more than 2 hours, with Trump saying Putin denied Russian involvement in the U.S. elections last year. Now, multiple U.S. intelligence agencies have said there is no doubt about Russia's interference in the election. Now, special prosecutors now trying to determine if the Trump campaign colluded with Moscow in the tampering scheme. Well, Russia says it reserves the right to retaliate in an ongoing dispute with the U.S. over the seizure of 2 Russian compounds last December by the Obama administration. Then President Barack Obama also expelled 35 Russian diplomats, accusing them of spying. Now, Russia says its patience is running out, and it wants the Trump administration to return the compounds. VOA's Cindy Sain reports.
Russia says they are dachas, used strictly for recreational purposes. U.S. intelligence agencies say they were used for surveillance until they were seized. Pressed by reporters, spokeswoman Heather Nauert refused to comment on the status of negotiations or say whether Secretary of State Rex Tillerson favors giving the compounds back to Russia under certain conditions.
I wouldn't characterize it that way. And look, one of the priorities here is, or the priority here, is to get the United States and Russia to a place where they can have a good, decent, solid relationship so we can work together on areas of mutual cooperation.
Russia is still threatening to retaliate in kind.
This fits standard Soviet and then Russian diplomatic practice. When we catch their spies and expel them, they immediately expel the same number of American diplomats. So they never acknowledge their culpability. And when we take steps to deal with egregious actions on their part, they always take counter steps. It's simply the way they do business.
Herbst said Moscow could retaliate in several different ways.
Well, we also have dachas, or at least had a single dacha in Russia. Conceivably, they could take that away. I remember when Obama took these steps, there was speculation that they were going to close down the major school used by our embassy's children. That would be very nasty indeed. And I would hope and expect that that would prompt a very strong reaction by us if they were to do that.
Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov met Monday at the State Department with U.S. Under-Secretary of State Thomas Shannon. Asked if Russia is close to getting its compounds back, Ryabkov replied, almost. Cindy Sain, VOA News, the State Department.
Well, images of life under Islamic State rule are rare because taking photos, drawing or painting was discouraged or even banned. An artist who escaped from Raqqa, an Islamic State stronghold in Syria, which is now under siege, depicts the scenes from the occupied city in a temporary shelter where he now lives. Viewers, as Larissa Hoke reports, Faisal's drawings and paintings are rare historic documents as well as works of art.
Faisal is not his real name. He is a Syrian farmer who has loved painting all his life. But when Islamic State took control over the area where he lived, he was forced to hide all his work and his painting tools.
When Islamic State came, they closed down libraries and shops selling CDs, music and movies. Anything that has to do with singing, dancing, drawing, or music was forbidden. I also play the oud, but I don't have it anymore. The militants broke it before I fled.
Faisal left his home northeast of the city about 3 months ago and found refuge with his wife and children in the Ain Issa camp. He is one of tens of thousands of Syrian civilians who have fled Raqqa since the beginning of the U.S.-backed offensive to retake the city. At the camp, he has made improvised tools in order to return to his art. Pillow feathers for paintbrushes and cigarette butts to substitute for charcoal. Much of his art documents scenes from the past 3 years in Raqqa, people jailed or emaciated by hunger or trying to hide from bombs.
This drawing represents a child wearing a school bag. She couldn't find a blackboard to write on, so she wrote on a missile.
Another drawing is based on a brutal scene he once witnessed in Raqqa.
I saw a car stop, and a man was brought out. He was tied. When he started speaking, his captors started to hit him. They took him into their car and back out 5 minutes later. He was then taken to be executed. Usually, Islamic State executes people using a butcher's knife, but this man was shot with a gun.
Faisal did not want to give his real name or the location of his village because he was forced to leave behind a son who has been held by Islamic State for the past 3 years. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We are also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends also. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. All coming up, President Trump delays visas for immigrant startups. Will he eliminate the program altogether? We have reaction from Silicon Valley. Stay with us.
This is Living Better.
This is the future of difficult surgeries as done with robots, as featured at a technology showcase in the UK. In development, a robot that can be used on eye veins as thin as a human hair.
The robot will make sure that the hand vibrations of the surgeon are completely eliminated. And the surgeon can still decide on any moment where the instrument goes inside the eye.
That's Andy Gibbles with the University of Leuven. Another robot in development can perform on breast tissue and deliver precise tumor-killing heat or cold. University of Twente professor Stefano Strangioli.
We made a technology which is all of plastic and pressure air, which allows to move a needle very precisely in real time under MR guidance.
Surgery robots have made headlines since the turn of the millennium, and experts say they continue to evolve to offer greater precision and less trauma to the patient. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile. In more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
Well, in Wednesday's business news, Zimbabwe has moved one step closer to its dream of building a Disneyland in Africa at the site of Victoria Falls, one of the world's biggest waterfalls. Joining us from New York with more details is Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino. Hello, Jill.
Hi, Vincent. So at the end of June, Zimbabwe signed a memorandum of understanding with Chinese investors to carry out a feasibility study and draw up a master plan for the project, first proposed in 2013 as a $300 million park with hotels, entertainment parks, and restaurants. Now, according to the source, the project is valued to be roughly $460 million in today's figures. Zimbabwe's tourism minister says that the first project will contribute to building a $5 billion tourism industry in Zimbabwe, which by 2020, and that would mean a five-fold increase on 2016's figure.
And why would this be key for Zimbabwe's economy?
The United States, European Union, and others imposed sanctions on Zimbabwe following the implementation of its controversial land reform program in 2000, which had a devastating effect on tourism. Now, the minister believes that Zimbabwe's standing in the international community has now improved and that the Victoria Falls project can help to revamp its image. So we'll have to see if there is any pushback from conservationists.
And of course, their word, China. You would say this continues to solidify China's presence in Africa, right?
Well, the minister declined to identify the Chinese investors, but indicated that they would be from a state-run company. But Chinese President Xi Jinping and Zimbabwe's leader Robert Mugabe, they're close. So China is Africa's single largest trade partner and has made major investments in infrastructure projects on the continent. China's investment in Africa from 2015 to 2016 increased over 500% just in 1 year alone.
I think we're going to see a silk blanket across the continent. Thanks a lot, Jill. Yeah. That's Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino reporting live from New York. Well, President Donald Trump's decision to delay a new program for immigrant entrepreneurs to come to the U.S. has drawn criticism from the technology industry. VOA's Arturo Martinez reports from Silicon Valley, California.
Silicon Valley entrepreneurs and venture capitalists could not hide their disappointment in a Trump administration decision to delay a policy that would have allowed foreign-born, money-backed entrepreneurs into the United States to start their businesses.
If we don't encourage entrepreneurs to come here from around the globe, we will go elsewhere, and that may be a benefit to the rest of the globe, but I think will be a loss for Silicon Valley.
The International Entrepreneur Rule was created under the Obama administration, set to take effect this month. The Department of Homeland Security is delaying the start until March 2018 while proposing to eliminate it. The rule would have granted entry for 30 months to 3,000 foreigners annually who are seeking to build and grow their businesses in the United States. To qualify, applicants would have to show they would create U.S. jobs and have reputable sources ready to invest at least $250,000 in their businesses.
Those 3,000 people could have created millions and millions of jobs, and this political move is now affecting the entrepreneurship as well as the economy.
The Department of Homeland Security said its decision to delay the program was due to limited resources to invest in legal immigration programs. Venture capitalist Fernando Franco believes Silicon Valley will still attract foreign entrepreneurs.
If they're successful and they get some funding, they can get a visa to stay here. So an entrepreneur visa would have been something very, very nice, but probably it wouldn't change things. Talent finds a way to stay in Silicon Valley.
Mary Meeker's annual Internet Trend Report found that 60% of the most highly valued tech companies in the United States were founded by first or second generation Americans, while 50% of the top private startups were founded by first generation immigrants. Arturo Martinez, VOA News, Silicon Valley.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Students from around the world bring their robots together to solve problems. We'll explain after the break.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Ghana, President Nana Akufo-Addo says the country will not extend its 3-year aid program with the International Monetary Fund, despite the IMF's urging to continue in order to complete its goals. In South Africa, on the occasion of Nelson Mandela's birthday, ANC Member of Parliament Mahosi Khoza denounces President Jacob Zuma and calls for a no-confidence vote next month. In Kenya, little-known vice presidential candidate Eliud Kariara takes questions alone for 1 hour after main party candidates fail to show up for debate. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Yoga enthusiasts from across Washington, D.C. band, twist, and hold a pose under the curious gaze of farm animals. As a local farm on the outskirts of the U.S. Capitol joins a growing trend in the United States, that is yoga with goats. Yes, you heard right. It's goat yoga. About 200 people attended the event, only the second such class held in the farm. Owner Susan Marsh opened up the farm to visitors after learning of the benefits of animal therapy. Goats are also used to calm race horses, and she hopes their calming influence can extend to human beings as well. Well, next up, a Middle Eastern rival to Uber has become the first ride-hailing firm to operate in the West Bank. Dubai-based Careem, whose name is a play on the Arabic word for generous or noble, launched in Ramallah in June, aiming to bring digital simplicity to the Palestinian territory. There is certainly a market for easier ride-hailing among the nearly 3 million Palestinians living in the West Bank. But the fact the mobile network is still 2G, that electronic payments are not the norm, and that Israeli checkpoints are common, make using the service somewhat cumbersome. Well, and finally, where's Ed? Well, singer Ed Sheeran's Twitter account has gone offline. Now, the move follows his cameo on the season premiere of Game of Thrones Sunday night. Sheeran's appearance as a singing Lannister soldier became a buzz about the topic on social media. Sheeran told Britain's Sun tabloid this month that he was no longer using his Twitter account, aside from posting his Instagram pictures to it. He called Twitter a platform for saying mean things and was trying to work out why people dislike me so much. Sheeran remains on Instagram, and that is what is trending today. Well, now robots from around the world clashed here in Washington this week as part of a global competition bringing high school students together to learn tech, but also to learn to cooperate to solve important problems. VOA's Steve Baragona reports.
It's part soccer match, part science exhibit, part United Nations. The first global challenge brought high schoolers from nearly 160 countries to Washington. They built robots to sort blue balls from orange ones and deliver them to different parts of the playing field. With its spirit of friendly international competition, it's like a robotics Olympics, but better, says founder Dean Kamen.
The sports in the Olympics aren't the sports that will give kids the skill sets, the vision, the courage, the technical expertise to take on the world's problems.
Kamen says these students are learning those problem-solving skills, along with the math, engineering, and programming prowess to be global tech leaders. But they also learn collaboration. Each match is 3-on-3. Teams have to cooperate to get the job done. Lida Azizi is with the Afghan team.
Every team has their own character to them. I can't say that we are good or they are good, but we are very excited and a bit nervous.
The Afghan team had extra challenges. An all-girl team in a male-dominated field from a country torn by conflict. Plus, their team was denied a visa twice. After an international uproar, President Donald Trump cleared them.
When we got rejected twice by the United States Embassy, we didn't feel defeated. We made our robot within 2 weeks, and we have our robot here. But we saw that God wanted us, and we got accepted. This time again, it is in God's hands. Whatever is in our destiny, but one thing is for sure, we will never lose our hope.
They did not win the most matches. Finland did. But that was never really the point, says Dean Kamen.
We've created a game where 160 robots are going to fight each other, and most of them will lose. But every kid that designed and built and sweated and worked over that robot has won.
Next year's competition will be in Mexico City. Steve Baragona, VOA News, Washington.
Really fascinating there. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC. That's Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. And from all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A plate is a dish that you put your food on.
Have a lot on your plate.
Hey Anna, I'm having a party this weekend. You should come.
I wish I could, but my weekend is really busy. I'm baking a wedding cake, writing my article, teaching 2 classes, and oh, my parents are visiting.
Wow, you have a lot on